Good evening. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners and welcome all of you here tonight. We're happy to have you. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Wendell Elementary School student Grant Blackman. Let me tell you a little bit about Grant. Grant is a respectful and conscientious young man. He has really good manners too. I spoke to him before the meeting and very nice manners. He consistently strives to do the right thing and always puts forth his very best effort regardless of the circumstances. He is kind-hearted and willingly helps his classmates whenever possible. Grant maintains a positive attitude and approaches his work without complaint. Grant is a third grader at Wendell Elementary School, and we're happy to have him here tonight. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Grant. For our invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches, we have Ed Keegan from St. Eugene's Catholic Church. Good evening. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you all, board the commissioners, for allowing me to lead you in prayer. Let us pray. Lord, grant that we may always allow ourselves to be guided by you, always follow your plans, and perfectly accomplish your holy will. Grant that in all things, great and small, today and all the days of our lives, we may do whatever you require of us. Help us respond to the slightest promptings of your grace, so that we may be your trustworthy instruments for your honor. May your will be done. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move into our public comment period. The public may participate in public comment by signing up at public comment the night before the meeting. If attending in person, you sign up at the podium by the door and you have 3 minutes to speak, or by submitting written statements via email to the town clerk, as long as they're received by the Friday before the board meeting the following Monday by 5 o'clock. And all written comments that are timely received will be read into the record for a length of 3 minutes. We have no one signed up tonight, but I still like to remind everyone that that opportunity is there for you. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move into our recognitions, reports, and presentations. Item 4A is the recognition of Wendell Elementary School staff member Megan Tillery. Come up to the podium so we can all stare at you. Ms. Tillery was nominated by the principal at Wendell Elementary School. Megan is an amazing teacher. She's always going above and beyond no matter what. She always tries to support her coworkers. She also works to build relationships with students at school and their families. Megan is always the first one to step up whenever anything is asked of our staff, and we are so happy and proud to honor Megan today. We just wanted to have you here tonight and recognize you and thank you for everything that you do for our kids in Wendell. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition. Appreciate all the support that y'all continue to give our school. And if anybody has any pull on getting the Wendell Boulevard construction done faster, our carpool families would be most appreciative.
Yeah, I'm sure they would, but good things take time.
I know.
It's going to be done soon, I hope.
Yes. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're very welcome. All right, item 4B is the National Community Survey Report presentation, and we're going to hear from our Assistant Town Manager, Stephanie Smith. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight to discuss the results of our second National Community Survey.
So as you know, the first survey was completed in 2022, so this is the first time that we've had survey results that we can compare against an existing survey that we did for the community. Of course, all of our our survey results are compared against the benchmark communities nationwide, and so you'll see those results as you flip through the packet. And I will dive right in. So the goal of the NCS, National Community Survey, is to evaluate the livability of Wendell. So it captures not just where people live, but where they want to live. You can see the 10 central facets of a community shown in the graphic of all the different livability factors that were asked in the survey. So all the households in the town of Wendell's town limits were eligible to participate in the survey. The data was provided from the U.S. Postal Service as well as city limits boundary from the planning department. The addresses that were within that list were randomly selected to receive surveys from Polco, the third-party consultant that conducted the survey on our behalf. 3,000 randomly selected households received mailings beginning in August 19th. So everybody who was selected received a postcard mailing letting them know that they were randomly selected and invited to participate in a survey. Next, those same households received the letter and survey and return envelope. There was also a QR code that people had the option to provide answers to the survey electronically if they preferred not to fill out the paper survey. So it ended up being 2,952 households that did receive invitations. 2% of the surveys were returned, vacant households, people had moved, things like that. 350 people completed the survey, which is similar to the 2022 survey that we conducted, and that provided a response rate of 12%. As a result, the level of confidence or margin of error for the community survey is 95%. Separately, if you were not selected by a postcard mailing, you did have the option for an online open participation survey that was available through our website and through social media. 31 people chose to complete that online survey. Those results are conducted and included in the report separately. So the survey results that you see in front of you are still the statistically significant survey results. The 31 additional survey results are also included, just not factored into the official survey. So to calculate the benchmark comparisons, the National Research Center, which is under the Polco umbrella, uses a database of over 600 communities whose residents evaluated the same kind of topics that we did. So there's a reason that we use the exact same survey every time we conducted it, so you can compare apples to apples to exactly how other communities are answering the question, as well as how our community answered those same questions 2 years ago. The communities included represent a wide geographic and population range. So then you analyze the data. All responses were analyzed to identify and resolve any potential duplicates. So that way, if somebody tried to take the survey more than once, it was identified and eliminated. And those results were then weighted to make the survey respondents reflected of the larger population of the community, including age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, housing type, and housing tenure. So a breakdown of exactly how that works is included in the report in front of you. This information will also be posted on our website starting tomorrow, and I'll get into that a little bit later. The results are in the 40 to 50% range are consistent with national average for responses. So it'll tell you on the right side of the survey responses where we compared to the benchmark communities. Anybody who answered don't know to any of the questions, those responses were removed so it wouldn't skew the overall analysis. So some items of note, 30% of the respondents have lived in Wendell less than 2 years. 26 of the respondents have lived in Wendell 2 to 5 years. So over 50% of people that responded to the survey have lived here less than 5 years. 15% of respondents have lived in Wendell more than 20 years. And so I think it's an interesting factor to keep in mind as you're reviewing the results and some of the responses of the categories in front of you, just having a frame of reference of how long people have been in the community. So what the National Community Survey is, responses are a perception of the participant and not necessarily factual. So for example, if somebody's taking the survey and there's a question about parks and recreation programming and somebody says there are none. Well, we know there are. their perception is there aren't. So this survey really gives us an opportunity to identify where those gaps are and look for ways to connect the dots and bring those resources to the community members that maybe don't know they exist. Survey results are also an opportunity to evaluate how we engage and communicate with the residents of Wendell. So I look at this as sort of a giant communications plan. So the results of the survey help guide us to where we should focus extra effort and energy. It also helps us know where we are reaching our community and our participants, the things that are scoring well. And of course, just because something doesn't score well doesn't mean we're doing poorly at it. It's something that we might be working on. It's something that is spoken to on our strategic plan, or it could be something that is out of our control altogether. One of the things with the survey is it asks a lot of questions about services that our community does not provide, such as utility services. And so just having that framework as you're reviewing that information can be helpful. So getting into the results, the key findings, the highest performing areas, resident sentiment towards healthcare and services were on the rise. Of course, we had a hospital open up in the last 2 years, and so you can really see where people made that connection there. Significant upward trends in the following ratings: overall quality of health services, availability of preventative health services, affordable quality healthcare, affordable quality mental health care. Several key economic areas saw notable gains since 2022. Of course, we saw that as well with the businesses and restaurants and different places to go and spend your time within Wendell. So higher ratings were seen for Wendell as a place to work, overall quality and variety of businesses and service establishments, vibrancy of downtown commercial areas, employment opportunities, shopping opportunities, and expected economic impact on family income. Highest performing areas, ratings for many survey items related to local government increased from 2022. Overall confidence in Wendell government increased from 53% to 61%. There's also upward trends in ratings for Wendell government generally acting in the best interest of the community, welcoming resident involvement, and being honest. And so community increasingly sees government and the board as trustworthy. Some potential areas of focus: despite the economic gains, reviews for cost of living fell from 52% to 42%. I think you can expect to see that nationwide. I don't think that's exclusive to Wendell. Ratings for the overall quality of utility infrastructure declined. Again, we talked before about utility billing, power utilities. Of course, garbage collection is under the town of Wendell's purview, but through a third-party provider. Some areas of community design were growing areas of resident concern. We saw a little bit of a downward trend shown in well-planned residential growth, code enforcement, and land use planning and zoning. With the growth of any community, I think you can expect to see feedback of that, and that kind of goes back to the data that we shared before about how long people have lived in town, people who have been here less than 5 years, people who have been here more than 20 years. So you can start to draw the parallels and start to understand maybe some of those perceptions that people are feeling and how they're responding to these survey questions. Areas of greatest change since 2022: increase in availability of preventative health services, availability of affordable quality health care, variety of businesses, overall quality of businesses, and Wendell as a place to work. Decreases: we saw utility billing, cost of living, recreation programs or classes, overall quality of utility infrastructure, and land use planning and zoning. So now we get into the actual details of the survey. I'm not going to read this line by line, but just wanted to give a general overview of the different categories of those facets that I mentioned before, the 10 different facets. So it breaks down into a pie chart of overall excellent, good, fair, or poor, and then each of the questions are answered so you can see that comparison from 2022 to 2024, and then each one will tell you whether we are similar, higher, or lower than our benchmark comparison communities. So quality of life was the first one. Governance, of course, you can see the excellent and good slices of the pie chart being over half. Economy, same thing, and so that's in line with what the overall takeaways of the survey were and improvement in our economic growth. Mobility, this one's not a terrible surprise. We spend a lot of time talking about mobility and transportation, and so it's reflective in the responses to the survey here. This is a good example of, this is an area that we know we're working on. We haven't seen the results necessarily, so this will be one that'll be interesting to watch when we do the survey again in 2 years. Community design. You can see the breakdown there as well, and of course that is characteristic of the overall results of a little bit of a decrease. So an area to look at and how we're connecting the dots for the community to help residents understand that it's the community design and those well-planned communities that result in that the commercial development and result in those places to work and those restaurants and establishments that scored so high. Utilities, again, we mentioned, a lot of these are not in our control, but also helpful information to have as we engage with our utility service providers. Safety scored really well with safety. Not a terrible surprise. This was similar to how we scored 2 years ago as well. Natural environment, this is another one where we scored pretty well last year, but this has to do with the general cleanliness, air quality, water resources for the community. And then Parks and Recreation. So I mentioned before, we saw a little bit of a dip in the program offerings for Parks and Recreation. So that's something that we want to spend time really digging into and understanding why that scored differently. One thing that we have been talking internally is the need to update our Parks and Recreation master plan. So we are getting to a time where we have checked a lot of the boxes of that to-do list of the master plan. And so thinking about the timing of when we want to do that update, that master plan gives us an opportunity to really dig into kind of the why behind that shift in perception of the programming that we're offering and maybe trying to fill in some of those gaps. Maybe people are answering the survey in a way that they are because we're not offering a certain type of programming that they're looking for. So something like a master plan update gives us an opportunity to really assess and strive to make improvements for future community surveys. Health and wellness, of course, we saw a big jump in that, so you can see those numbers spike up. And again, you can make that direct correlation to opening a hospital in town to seeing those improvements in quality of healthcare. Education, arts, and culture, somewhat similar to last year, but this is another one that we can dive into a little bit more with something like a master plan update. Inclusivity and engagement. And so this is one that's interesting to see how our residents engage with the community, how they view the community as a place to live, sense of community, a place to retire, seeing increases in things like making all residents feel welcome, taking care of vulnerable residents, valuing, respecting residents from diverse backgrounds. And so you're seeing those parallels in what the board has prioritized with our non-discrimination ordinance and the efforts that we're putting in making sure that anybody who lives here feels welcome to be here. We can see that that is having an impact and improving in our community. So this is a breakdown of our residents' participation levels. And so the people who responded to the survey, you can see the parallels of if you responded to the survey, you're likely to vote in your most recent election. 73% of people participated. Not too much of a surprise there. And it drills down into, do they watch our local meetings? Do they attend local meetings? Do they contact elected officials? How do they connect with us and how do they get information from the community, or from the town rather? And then how people access information. Again, I mentioned before, I see this as a giant communications plan. So seeing how people engage, where they get their information, helps us being able to target how we're getting information out to the community in different ways. So next steps. First step was sharing the results with you this evening. Tomorrow, we'll be posting the survey results on the website and sharing them through our social media channels so residents and neighboring communities can see how we did. And so the paper version of the results in front of you is just the kind of simple PDF version. There is a dashboard platform that gives that same information, but in a more detailed, drill down, kind of a prettier, more tech-savvy way. And so that will be available through our website so people can kind of toggle over different parts of the survey and highlight different components of the results. We've mentioned before the results of this survey will be used to inform the strategic plan update, of course, the fiscal year 25 budget, and then our capital improvement program projects. And then I've mentioned throughout the whole presentation that this really does help us identify outreach and education opportunities so we can try to connect those dots, learn a little bit more about the why of some of those results, and then look for ways to get the information to our residents and so they understand what we do and how we do it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Information. All right, item 4C is a presentation of draft initiatives for the 2025 strategic plan. Mr. Collins.
Good evening. I would say one more thing about the National Citizen Survey is that's not something that we have to do. That's something that every community that participates in that elects to do. And that also says something about what type of community elects to receive that kind of feedback. So I would argue that our peer group isn't average or potentially challenged communities in a lot of places. These are communities that value the community engagement, want to take on that challenge and see how you relate to others. The idea that we do relate similarly to a lot of those peers says a lot for Wendell and where we are and where we're going. So that's one of my takeaways when I look at that. But that's not what I'm presenting about. I'm presenting about the strategic plan draft initiatives, which y'all spent a lot of time with staff and each other talking about this fall so far. So putting it down on paper, presenting that out to you and the public before we go more in depth with the public and public feedback. As you know, the next steps in this process is as soon as tomorrow morning, Matt and I will be at the Chamber Town Talk with the mayor, presenting out these draft initiatives. We'll be in front of all the appointed boards and commissions of the town. We'll go through 4 different charrette groups, different areas of our community to receive input on that. We'll bring them back to you at your budget retreat next winter and get you to prioritize those initiatives and report out what we found. We'll bring back that draft plan for your consideration and adoption, and then the plan will then speak to the next 2 fiscal years to give policy guidance to the departments about how to make sure that we're going in the policy direction of the board. And then after 2 years, we'll start again and do it again. So there's a little bit for the public here. You have the draft initiatives in front of you. There are 5 goals to a strategic plan. Goal 1 deals with downtown vibrancy, economic growth, and community character. In our budget document and on our town documents is the full existing 2023 plan. So I welcome the public to go and read in detail what our current plan is, and then provide input as we move forward on the 2025 plan. Management in progress means these are things that are happening now, and staff is committing on delivering next steps in these processes in the next 2 years. It's something that we're saying to the board, we got this part. What's the strategic direction beyond that you need us to take? So examples in Goal 1 of management in progress include completing the neighborhood plan in Pleasant Grove. Continue evaluating areas near I-87 and Wake Tech for job growth and creation. Implementing the Brownfield EPA program that we have. Strategic initiatives are those items that you've identified in your communication to staff over the last few months. They include, we're going to be completing the downtown streetscape plan, but what's the next step of implementing, and what's that funding mechanism to get that moving? Working with Wake County and our other housing partners to provide a diversity of housing options across our community. How do we encourage infill development as a use by right in downtown? Everything from downtown library kiosks, how do we promote public art, downtown business groups, encouragement. All of these aspects play into that role of Goal 1. Goal 2 goes into public safety and neighborhood improvement. How do we provide for a safe, secure community that nurtures livable and well-maintained neighborhoods? Obviously, from that National Citizen Survey response, that perception of safety and community is important to our residents that respond. So this goes into that space. We achieved CALIA accreditation. That's national accreditation for our police department. And so making sure that they continue that, it's a big trust lift for our community to show that we have a professional police department that has policies and rules, follows them, documents them, and learns when we make mistakes. Continuing department-wide training on implicit bias and community-engaged policing. That is the mission of our Wendell Police Department. So keeping that up. Getting out in the neighborhoods for cleanup days, communicating programs and processes, being seen in the neighborhood, and lending a hand to help neighborhoods activate and stay clean and safe. And more than ever, crisis intervention training. There's a lot of mental health needs in every community in the country, and Wendell's no different. That puts our first responders in a situation where we're dealing with people when it's not their best day. And so making sure that our officers are appropriately trained and are aware of the resources to help direct people in those manners is important. The new initiatives or continued initiatives that y'all identified, there's a lot of opportunities with Wendell Fire to partner, both in training, emergency management exercises. When we look at starting to design the new police station moving forward, there's an opportunity of talking about what's happening with Fire Station 1's property next door, to be able to coordinate some of that for potential future needs of our community. We heard medical services, they've seen improvements in our community. How can we continue encouraging and promoting the expansion of medical facilities, pharmacies, and other like services for the residents of our town with our partners? It's not something we directly do, but we can definitely encourage. Natural disasters, I mean, we've seen with Hurricane Helene how that impacts large areas of our state. Whether anticipated or not, whether it's happened in the past or not. Our organization, and as our community grows, has to also grow with our capacity in that space. So hearing that that's a space that y'all want us to improve on in the next 2 years. Another growth generated factor is specialty units that grow. More people means more traffic. More traffic means there's more enforcement needs and pressures on our department. We still have to be able to answer the other calls that come in, and so having specialized units to deal with growth in different ways. Industrial and commercial growth requires a different kind of policing skills and sets than just your traditional residential domestic related calls for service. And so understanding what that means as we grow and making sure our department is right-sized for that was one of the initiatives that we heard from you. Goal 3 deals with infrastructure, transportation, the environment. It's a fairly broad goal that covers everything from how water drains to how we partner with people that provide water and sewer service. Our roads, our sidewalks, and everything in between. Amazingly, it's time to redo our 5-year pavement condition survey, which will guide the next 5 years of improvements to our streets. This board has been bullish on connectivity and sidewalks, and so there are a couple goals that specifically speak to that. With the bond passing, not this fall, but the prior fall, there are projects underway with various intersection. When people speak of traffic problems, they're usually talking about Wendell Falls Parkway and Eagle Rock Road. That project is in design currently, and when design is completed, we'll go into construction to implement the improvements on that intersection. And we heard that clearly about making sure that our bond-funded projects move forward in the next 2 years. That's a larger project. There's also an understanding that there's smaller needs, such as Big Falls Drive. There's a conceptual plan that'll be initiated this fiscal year, but moving towards implementation in the next 2 years of how to make that more pedestrian and a calmer traffic cross-section. Starting to think about how we do the railroad connection across between Wendell Falls and Wendell Commerce Center to have that connectivity from Wendell Boulevard to Wendell Falls Parkway close to the interstate. Updating our transportation plan kind of falls into that. When you're growing rapidly, you need to constantly evaluate and make sure that your plans are current and reflect the needs of the community as it grows. So that's one of those areas that we receive feedback on, and being responsive to that, the board said we need to make sure that we're updating that and keep our eyes on that the next 2 years. Another area that the public and the board has definitely said keep your eyes on is parks, recreation, special events, open space, and culture, goal 4. There are a lot of things on the verge of completion in this space. If you look, what Stephanie was talking about, we need to update our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It's because we've completed nearly 10 years' worth of projects identified in what we adopted 5 years ago in 2019. So, yeah, we need to look forward to the next 10 years in that space. The bond referendum passed for the county with the library site, so we need to start talking with them. It's still a ways out before they build the regional library. I think it's third down their list, but we still need to maintain communication the next 2 years to stay on their radar with that. Making sure that they finish Lake Myra Park, get that construction going in the next 2 years. We've got the Main Street Greenway that we're moving from design to construction this year, so making sure that gets done early in this 2-year period. Hollybrook Park, making sure that that's completed, should be done well before this plan gets implemented, but don't want that to fall through. And obviously the construction of Carver Community Center at Pleasant Grove. That will also be complete in the next 2-year period. Long list of strategic initiatives, starting with that Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Friday, had a meeting with a consultant. We saw the first concept plan for the 5-field athletic field complex. So that design is moving forward. So in the next 2 years, that's complete, and we're going on to the design and potentially starting construction on the new rec center also, the multi-court rec center. There's a number of neighborhood parks, both from being provided from development activity in our community, as well as town-initiated projects throughout our community. As you know, our current Parks and Recreation Master Plan calls for having meaningful open space or recreation access, walkable or bikeable, to every neighborhood in Wendell. And so we've been actively planning and working to implement that aspect. And so not only implementing the construction of Main Street Greenway, but moving from design and into construction on Main Street Neighborhood Park on land provided by a developer there off of Jake May, and a number of others. Number one question we probably get that we don't have a project board is a map and plan for how that Wendell Falls Parkway multi-use trail gets implemented. We can talk all through that, but actually having that map and showing the implementation plan and schedule is something that the public and the board has indicated they'd like to see, and that's on this list also. There's a gap that will play out in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan to make sure we have sufficient court and outdoor field facilities as we grow. And so that's also on here to make sure that we're moving in that space. Buffalo Creek Greenway is having that first phase of construction that's funded in this current fiscal year that will be kicking off this spring, but moving on into design and construction of phase 2 to go past that multi-field athletic field complex along the creek is next in this 2-year period. So there's a wide variety of opportunities and programming. The board also started getting into how do we partner with other neighborhood and community groups to deal with aquatic facilities and cultural facilities, outdoor amphitheaters. How can we find ways to include art into our public space? The final goal in our strategic plan is organizational culture and communication. That's the catch-all for the internal look at our organization. How do you see our organization? The first one is there because it's a carryover from last year on ADA, but it was very clear from conversation with the board to maintain our people-first attitude, whether that's externally to our public or in particular the people who serve our public and our employees. Within the next 2 years, we'll have a completed new public works yard facility. We'll also be completely implementing Wi-Fi services in downtown and in parks. As we add new parks and new public spaces, how do we provide that same Wi-Fi service to the public? When you look at strategic initiatives in this place, in this space, the board said we need to maintain a training mindset in our staff and organization. As we grow and we're providing service, how are our employees growing with to make sure that those services are being provided? And how are we taking care of those employees through the wellness and benefits programs that serve them? A lot of these capital needs and organizational capacity have prices. So continuing to work with our financial advisor to make sure that we're efficient and effective and mindful of the public purse that we're entrusted with. Communications falls into this space. As Stephanie mentioned, a National Citizen Survey, that's an excellent tool to learn how to better communicate with our public and making sure that we're taking time to listen and that we're communicating to all the different publics that we have, not just the vocal ones before us in a moment. Implementing a new customer relations management so that as we grow and we receive more community input, that we're mindful of how we communicate back and so people don't fall through the loops on that. Growing communities, it's ever challenging to what facility do we need at what time for which services to maintain services across a geographically and population growing community. So having a facility needs analysis over the next 2 years to identify what that is over time to make sure that we can continue planning beyond your town manager working with finance and the financial advisor, but having a more planned approach, as y'all know, I tend to do. And the other direction that I heard from y'all in your strategic plan retreat is to make sure that there's a lot of cross-department opportunities to interface. That maintains kind of a family atmosphere within our organization. It also allows for people to grow and see where they may better fit within our organization. And there's also just a need for different departments to work closer. You're not able to work in silos in a large growing community. You need to have communication across different departments and with our external partners to be able to provide service. And with that, it kind of brings back to that first slide. Glad to answer any questions you may have. I know I went over that fairly quick. We're at the top of, just below the top of the funnel on this process, as you know. Be going public with all of this and getting feedback, and you'll have a lot more space and time to get it where you wanted it by the end of the process. But happy to answer any questions you have now tonight.
Thank you. Anything from the board?
One comment, since we're at the beginning of the process, I'm sure it will be addressed as we go through the process. I can't think of the name of the backside of this food line connection. I can't think of the name of the development to it, but we had discussed that at the retreat, and I know that I've heard it since. And it's,
Did it the other day to 'em.
I know that it's a interesting piece for timing-wise with private parties and development, but it's something that's on folks' mind.
I'll make sure that's clearly added.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else from the board? I love this presentation. I love all the things that are getting accomplished, and that a huge number of them. I know, I can see the faces of the people that they're going to benefit. It just gets me real excited. So thank y'all for that. It's really nice.
For the public that might have heard the teacher ask about the construction on Wendell Boulevard,
Yeah.
that is a culmination of 12 years of effort by the town to get to the point that they're implementing something on the sidewalk between Wendell Elementary School and the Food Line Shopping Plaza. That's been a very long effort. Part of that is getting to the point that the town could fiscally figure out how to do that project. The state and federal funding that's used to implement a large part of that project. There's a lot of aged utilities within that area that require a lot of movement and adjustment and stormwater, things that the public don't see below the surface. And so we appreciate their input, definitely understand frustration with taking time. We'll be working with the school about designing how to do their pickup lines to the rear of the school moving forward to make sure our arterial roads like Wendell Boulevard and Wendell Falls Parkway remain functional moving forward.
I've been begging for that for,
Yeah. So the
Forever.
sidewalk will get done, and that part of the construction will be less. However, we'll be shifting to the intersection of Wendell Falls Parkway and Wendell Boulevard for signalization, adding a turn lane, and closing off Wall Street to through traffic at that odd angle. So there will be continued impact on traffic in that area for another year plus. And so there is some patience. It's not necessarily ending. It's more kind of mid to a third of the way through at this point. The end product, we hope, helps alleviate some of the issues in that space. It will definitely make it safer for people trying to get to school, which is a big part of that, or get to food. Those are big components of that. People will not be walking in, hopefully, in Wendell Boulevard with their children, which I know we've all seen a number of times in the past. So I know that when I'm there and I'm getting a little frustrated in traffic, I try and think about who's going to benefit from that and the safety that entails for the kids and families that are trying to get to those two things. And I put myself aside a minute. So I understand the frustration, but in case someone did not know that in the public, I wanted to make sure that was said.
anything else from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into section 5, our public hearings. Item 5A is a request to rezone approximately 24.07 acres at 1408 and 0 Marshburn Road from Town of Wendell Residential Agricultural to Town of Wendell Planned Unit Development, adding acreage to a previously approved planned unit development. Mr. Coates.
Yep, good evening, Mayor and board members. There's two items that are related. The first is the rezoning of the 24 acres. The second item is a special use permit to apply the planned unit development regulations to the 24 acres. So this first item is legislative. The second item, there'll be a swearing in and go through that process. Just to lay this out there, the applicant's team is here tonight too to answer any questions you may have. We'll go through these items. And so The first item is a request to rezone approximately 24.07 acres, as you mentioned, located at 1408 and 0 Marshburn Road, from Town of Wendell Residential Agriculture to Town of Wendell Planned Unit Development 2202, adding acreage to that previously approved planned unit development. We're asking you to hold the public hearing. Item summary, that the two parcels, parts of the two parcels, both parcels are owned by Fur Property Investments LLC and Joshua Fur, to add the acreage to the Ammons PUD, which was approved in 2022. As I mentioned, it was approved in November 2022. Just to give you a project update, phases 1 and 2 have received preliminary approval and are in construction drawing review at this time. A planned unit development does consist of at least two components: a rezoning, which is heard by the Planning Board and Board of Commissioners, and a special use permit, which is quasi-judicial hearing before you as a Board of Commissioners. In this case, the annexation is not required because the acreage was annexed into the town limits in February 2020. Here's an overall map of the project. You can see in the red hashed outline area is the 24 acres, which is 24 acres in between Marshburn Road and what was already previously approved. So it does provide additional access for road connectivity. What the PUD is changing, and we'll go over changes and then what's not changing, just to clarify. They're asking to add the 24.07 acres, add up to 97 units, which would make a max of 1,930 units. It does provide a connection to Marshburn Road, and they are asking for a buffer to be removed. Previously, when Marshburn Manor and Ammons were both under review, they did have to provide a buffer. And now that both are approved, the densities are the same, so the buffer is no longer required. They're also extending the greenway that was approved in the original Ammons PUD to extend onto this 24 acres. What's not changing? Density is not changing, still capped at 4 units per acre in the PUD. The unit type and mix remain the same, so the chart that has all of the lot dimensions and potential unit types does not change. The amenities, pool, clubhouse, the dedication of the greenway, dog park, dedication of a public park site, none of that's changing. Unit type, design standards, none of the conditions of what the units will look like, none of that's changing. Setbacks. And the TIA, the only adjustment is that they're adding that connection to Marshburn Road, which was not part of their original TIA, and that they're working through with NCDOT in the town at this time. That additional access is key. There's 2 connections through Marshburn Manor to Marshburn Road, but this will give the Ammons project direct access to Marshburn, as well as their other location off of NC 97. So Blueprint Wendell classifies this as medium residential 1. This is what the other remaining acreage in the PUD were classified. You want a PUD that has a mix of unit type, different lot sizes. Helps for a variety of reasons. It provides housing for people, a variety of ages and what their interests are, whether it be single-story, multi-level townhomes, provides a mix. Also helps with potentially making sure that people can have whatever product type they're looking for. They can find that in the town of Wendell and not have to move because we don't have that housing type. The improved open space, they're still dedicating over 120 acres of open space. The greenway trails, the little river corridor greenway, and also the park, the future town park. Medium residential 1 it does allow up to 2 to 4 units. They're not proposing any changes to their unit cap. Statement of plan consistency. Any recommended change to the zoning map should be accompanied by a statement. Staff does find that this is consistent with medium residential 1. Density falls within the range. It also provides parks and a layout that is consistent with the place type. And for the following reasons, we are recommending approval. It does provide a diversity of housing. Green space, greenway goal increases public access to the outdoors, but also those greenway trails, the park, and also helps expand along Little River, that corridor. There's been plans for decades to eventually have greenways along there, so this development will certainly help implement that. Technical Review Committee, if this is approved, preliminary plans will be reviewed by TRC. They've certainly been reviewing phases 1 and 2 of the previous approval. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting back in 2022. They also held a new one in September 25th with 6 people in attendance. You can see the notes in your packet from that meeting. Planning Board recommendation was 6-3 to recommend approval, and staff is recommending approval. We can field any questions you have on the rezoning part, and the applicant's team is here as well.
Okay, let's open the public hearing. Any questions from the board? Okay, does the applicant wanna?
So give us just one moment to switch over. They do have a
Sure.
PowerPoint. Give it just a moment. Hold on one second. Gregory's switching it over to
Okay,
yours.
I get ahead of it.
Yep.
There we go, very good.
Give him 1 second. There we go.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners, town staff, town attorney. My name is Nick Robinson, and I practice law at Bradshaw, Robinson, Slaughter, and Rayner in Pittsboro, North Carolina. And I'm delighted to be here in front of you all once again on behalf of the applicant, which is NB Ammons Acres LLC, rather generic entity name, but it represents the same folks who have developed the Wendell Falls project. And so they're with me here tonight, Tanya Matson and Gareth Avent with Brookfield, and Chris Seamster from McKim & Creed, who have been here along the way. A lot of this, I think, Brian just went over, so I don't really need to belabor any of the points, but the main one just being that that they're going to, the request is to rezone the 23.45 or so acres, plus I guess a total of 24.07 acres, which is just a portion of each of the northern parcel and the southern parcel, to add them to the Ammons planned unit development. And Brian went over, well, the hearing procedure, so we don't have to spend much time on that. This is just a little reminder of some of the amenities in Wendell Falls. The nature and feel of the Ammons project will be similar to the nature and feel of the Wendell Falls project. Some of the proposed amenities in the Ammons project, to which this acreage will be adding private pool and clubhouse, playgrounds, pocket parks, the 10-foot multi-use path that Brian mentioned, and about 2.5 miles of public greenway, public park, 5-acre site, and a dog park. These are just precedential images for the types of housing that you would anticipate having in the portion of the project that's being added, which is identical to the type of housing that you have in the portion of the project you already approved, the Ammons portion. This is the map that just shows to the left of it. That's in the little red cloud there. You can see that that is the 24 acres or so that would be added, and you can see pretty readily there. Is there a pointer on here? There's not, okay. You can see readily there that that property connects to Marshburn Road, whereas the Ammons project, as previously approved, only had the one entrance up there on NC 97, which I think will be of great benefit to diffusing the traffic several different directions. Mentioned that there was a neighborhood meeting. I don't need to belabor that point. This is the property description, technical legal thing of the property that is to be rezoned. We spent a lot of time on the application materials, and I think Brian did a great job of summarizing those. And of course, your determination that you're making on whether or not it's appropriate to approve this amendment to the zoning map would be whether or not the proposed amendment is consistent with your comprehensive plan. And we agree with your staff that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we agree with the recommendation of your planning board to approve that. We went into great detail in the application about how it's consistent with the plan, but I don't see a need tonight, unless you have some specific questions, to belabor all of those points. So that's really our presentation on this. We would request that the board look favorably on the application to change the map and rezone this property to PUD designation, so that we can move to the second part of the hearing tonight about the special use permit. Happy to answer any questions, and we have the whole team here.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one. In the meeting notes from the September 2024 neighborhood meeting,
Yes.
there was a note about a neighbor who had a question related to access to their property that had previously been allowed by across the original part of the Ammons
Yeah.
property. That was a challenge. Can you give us an update on that? And just one other thing I would add to that, a lot of times with the neighborhood meeting notes that we get, there's a little bit more information about who was there and sort of helping us understand who's talking and
Yeah.
that sort of thing that was missing. So there's a lot of this I don't know. I don't know who that
Okay.
was or anything, but if you could give us an update on that issue,
Okay,
that's important.
yeah, certainly. I think Tanya Mattson can speak to that. She's the project director, and I think that subject came up that night.
Hi. Yes, I think you're referring to Donna Fowler with the KAK farm that's at the, right to our entrance. Yes, so we've discussed with her points of access, continuing to discuss. We spoke with her yesterday, so active communication going between both parties, but there should not be a concern for her access. We'll accommodate what she needs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
We got one, and y'all will have to forgive me. I missed the vote on the first one. I was floating in the Gulf of Mexico with my wife on a 10-year anniversary trip. So I wasn't here for the first project presentation, so I'm playing catch up. And I also have serve a role with the fire department board, for our board. Understanding that, at least from reading the notes, the commercial elements are not there. Understanding this is not a Wendell Falls. There are still, I think, other, for this size of a development, things that we would consider. Zebulon's fire department is relocating and moving. There's going to be a relocation of Wendell Station 2. Obviously, the reason that, in my opinion, we have a good ISO rating with the amount and the density of homes that we've built in Wendell Falls is because of a newly located fire station there. I think both the school system and the fire department, or Wake County and/or the town, would be interested in public open space or open space that could be used for that purpose, recognizing that that's I think an added value to the communities when you're selling the brand that y'all have sold at Wendell Falls. This is a very safe community that's connected, that has everything that you need there. I don't think that it has to have everything you want, so this one might not have the Wingstop and the Starbucks,
Right.
but it does need to have the things you need, and if that's an ambulance and a fire truck, I'd like to make sure that we're thinking about that as the project goes forward. As I said, I wasn't here on the last one. I remember telling Commissioner Lutz the night that he chaired that meeting that I would have supported the project. But this has been a ongoing question. This is the first time I had the opportunity to speak to you about it. So I wanted to make sure y'all are aware of that.
Yep.
Is that,
Yeah, I think if the response is specifically about allocation of land for fire safety and other public safety, I think, yeah, I mean, I appreciate the point, and of course, not every project will have that. I think at the time that this project was initially proposed and reviewed and approved, the big emphasis was on making sure that there was a lot of open space in this project, making sure that we could open up and unlock the greenways along the river, and put the pedestrian element in there for public open space. But I appreciate your point. I mean, I think it's not unheard of for developments to allocate. And also there's a 5-acre park. And so I think on balance, back then, the priority decisions that funneled their way through at the project review were for the park and for the greenways, and maybe it's the next project of this size where there's a donation of a site or something of that nature, if that makes sense. It's hard to do them all in one, all in one
Yeah,
project.
no, I heard the total open space number, and my thought was just if there's a way to, well, one, keep it, I missed the larger development conversation originally. If there's a way for us to word that open space so that, like if y'all are truly leaving it as open, right? Like it's not a planned open space, that the wording would allow for use for a public safety. It's same concept, the public good, public safety.
Yeah, definitely not all of the open space in this project is going to be active open space. So there's going to be some inactive open space. And I think the UDO put some restrictions on how much of it you're allowed to have be active and how much you have to keep open. And I think we're meeting all of those requirements. I don't know if Brian wants to jump in.
Yeah, I can just chime in quickly. So the neighboring land use plan classification, so the intersection of 97 and Marshburn is classified as activity center and innovation district, which certainly could have non-residential projects, but also things like fire station, police station. The Marshburn Manor project, which is approved, does have acreage along NC 97 that we set aside for neighborhood commercial type uses. So there are some sites nearby. The school district now does own 35 acres at 97 for a potential school site that they have purchased as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Anything else from the board? Anything?
I've got one more question. I had the same question Commissioner Eatman had, and this is maybe a town manager question procedurally. I obviously live in Wendell Falls. I appreciate 2.5 miles of greenway. I appreciate the multi-use path. I appreciate the product. I'm a participant in it. But my question is, and again, sort of a trust but verify here thing, obviously trust here, but if we approve theoretically both these things tonight and the farmer, for whatever reason, things don't work out and we have a disgruntled person trying to call us, is this our only bite at the apple, i.e., I guess my concern is to ensure that that person can still access the land that's behind the Ammons property and still do the things they've always been doing for years. If we say yes and yes tonight, and that doesn't work out, even though they're in positive, active negotiations, is this our only bite at the apple? Vis-a-vis, I get a disgruntled farmer that calls me a month from now and goes, "Hey, Braxton, we got an issue."
It would be this, and the attorney can chime in on this as well. I mean, we got a couple very qualified attorneys that can answer legal questions. From a process that you are dealing with the PUD and the development approval, yes, this is that opportunity. Again, deferring to the attorneys, my understanding of people who access property a particular way, they have legal rights outside of this process to make sure that they have access to their property. You are not the sole jurisdiction to grant that. If someone has some form of historic or prescriptive access, that's between those two affected parties to work out. There's a process in the judicial system to do that.
Thank you.
In my understanding, just to clarify, does that property have access or frontage on 97, or is it landlocked? Yes. So they have frontage on an existing state highway for their property. It's not a landlocked parcel that has no other.
That answers it for me. That answers it. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Is there anyone that has come tonight that would like to speak for or against this? All right. Don't see anyone. Anything else from the board?
I have just a question.
Yeah.
Just in general, looking at kind of the site here, and Brian, this may be best for you. There's a small little residential home that's right there on Marshburn Road that seems to be kind of surrounded by everything. Is this just the homeowners, are they just kind of happy just staying where they are? I would imagine that somehow this would have been.
The So the homeowner that's north of this site, that's surrounded by Marshburn Manor, or Mr. Furr, who's still gonna retain some acreage?
The small one right there above the site there on Marshburn Road.
Okay. So that's surrounded by the Marshburn Manor approved project. The home has been renovated. They have new owners who moved in after these development approvals. We have had conversations with them, but, I mean, their only question was, why wasn't our property included in the development of these other projects? And we said, you're gonna have to ask the person you bought it from, because we're not aware of, we don't get involved in what properties are proposed by the development team. So right now, that single-family home was renovated and is being used as a single-family home by new owners that moved there.
And that was my question as well. It just seemed like it had been gobbled up in one of these before now, so, okay.
Yep. It's still on well and septic, roughly an acre in there, so.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
All right, excuse me, anything else from the board? All right, we'll close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the zoning map amendment, PUD 2202B, as it's consistent with Blueprint 2030.
Hold on a minute. Okay, so you made a motion to approve the zoning map amendment, PUD 22028, or maybe that's a B, as it is consistent with Blueprint Wendell 2030. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yeah.
I say, just kind of looking forward at this site, and I know what we're adding on here is a splash, just a small drop in the pool here, but, and I like the connectivity between 97 and Marshburn that he gives. My only concern is the connection to Marshburn and as we all are aware of it's been discussed tonight, the traffic situations down Marshburn and with the sidewalks and backing into Food Line and everything we've seen there, and just, I have, at the time of this project presented, it was very appealing. I guess I had plans for commercial, and I still would like to see much more of a commercial presence in that area, because the size of a project of this coming back down Marshburn Road into town, which, you know, in theory, I would welcome, I think does make our traffic concerns much worse. And while I don't think that the, additional 97 units is going to make a grand difference, just the size of this and what we're looking at now, and hearing every day from somebody of our traffic issues in town, the ability to keep people closer to their site here and having the amenities they need, whether it's, grocery stores and medical offices, seems to be I think a very high priority for me at this point too. So I just would say going forward that that's something I would hopefully see more of.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? All right, we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay. I'll move to item 5B, which is a evidentiary hearing on a special use permit amendment request by NB Ammons Acres LLC to add 2407 acres located at 0 and 1408 Marshburn Road to a previously approved planned unit development. Mr. Cawley, can you tell us our rules, and then we'll get everybody sworn in?
Yes, ma'am. This is an evidentiary hearing, or AKA a due process hearing, or AKA a quasi-judicial hearing. Has several names, but the gist of it is that it entitles the applicant to due process of law, which means you sit more like judges in a courtroom than like typical local elected officials who are deciding legislative matters. Witnesses are sworn, testimony is under oath, the evidence has to be competent, material, and substantial. The applicant is entitled to unbiased decision makers as if they were in a court of law. So if there are any concerns about that, they need to be disclosed. And basically, you, as judges, apply the evidence you hear to the requirements of the ordinance, the SUP requirements, and decide whether it satisfies those requirements. And if so, you grant the permit.
Thank you. All right, anyone who's going to be giving any kind of testimony in this public hearing, step forward and be sworn in by the clerk, please. You guys can all come up here at the same time. Yeah, just crowd around. If you want to put your hand on the Bible, you can, you don't have to. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, we'll open the public hearing and let's hear from our staff.
Yep, good evening, Mayor. This is the evidentiary hearing on the special use permit for the PUD amendment request by NB Ammons Acres LLC to add acreage located at 0 and 1408 Marshburn Road to a previously approved planned unit development. We're asking you to hold the evidentiary hearing and consider making a motion. The applicant is requesting a special use permit to add the approximately 24.07 acres that was just part of the rezoning before you. Planned unit developments do consist of two components: a rezoning, which rezones the property, and then the special use permit, which actually applies the regulations to the acreage. As I said, the special use permit hearing governs whether or not the regulations in the PUD document will be applied to the additional acreage. As we mentioned earlier, the addition of this acreage would allow for up to additional 97 units and still keep overall density the same. The PUD document included as an attachment has exhibits related to the proposed PUD. As we mentioned earlier, currently phases 1 and 2 have preliminary approval. Construction drawings are under review. A logging plan has been reviewed and approved by the town and Wake County Environmental Services to allow timbering of the property. Special use permit criteria, which are listed in our UDO, we'll go over these. Staff does not make a recommendation. However, we do provide comments based on the special use criteria. Criterion A, that the proposed use does not affect adversely the general plans for the physical development of the town. The proposed use is residential and consistent with Blueprint Wendell 2030, as it classifies this area as medium residential 1. The proposed use will not be contrary to the purposes stated for these. The PUD district is allowed under the town's UDO and was previously approved. The proposed use will not adversely affect the health and safety. The applicant's proposing residential homes on the property. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the use of development of adjacent. The proposed development plan will include required road stubs based on the town's UDO, so it actually provides access for the development and use of neighboring properties. Also, the properties, when developed, will provide additional access to Marshburn Road. The proposed use will not be affected adversely by the existing use. The existing use on site is a single-family home that will be retained and is not included within the project boundaries. The owner of that, Mr. Furr, is here tonight as well. The criterion F, the proposed use will be placed on a lot of sufficient size to satisfy the space requirements. The applicant's limiting the project density to 4 units per acre and has provided a variety of lot sizes for those residential units. G, the proposed use will not constitute a nuisance or hazard. Adding the 24 acres will provide for additional access point for the development. Having multiple ways in and out of a neighborhood assists with vehicular movement. The greenway extension will assist with physical activity as well. Standards set forth for each particular use, which a permit may be granted. The applicant is not proposing any additional lot sizes from the previous approved. Lot sizes do meet the town's UDO standards. The board may impose or require additional restrictions and conditions necessarily to protect the health and safety of workers and residents. The applicant does have design standards for the housing units that would be constructed. The development will contain sidewalks, greenways, amenities, and a neighborhood park to be dedicated to the town. G, the proposed use shall be subject to the minimum area setback and other location requirements. The applicant is proposing lot sizes and setbacks that meet the town's UDO. Criterion K, the proposed use shall be subject to off-street parking and service requirements for these. The PUD does meet the town's UDO standards for parking requirements. Here's the overall map of adding the 24 acres. Staff analysis. The town of Wendell planning staff presents the staff analysis. We do not make a recommendation on special use permit request. The legal ads did run in the newspaper on November 1st and November 8th. Notification was mailed to adjacent property owners on October 30th, and a public hearing notice was placed at the location on October 31st. It is key to note, we did place, this is amending the PUD, so we did not just the frontage along Marshburn, we also did include all of the neighbors of the Ammons PUD acreage, and did place signs on 97 as well as Marshburn. I can field any questions you have. The applicant does have a PowerPoint as well.
Okay. Any questions from the board, the town staff? All right, let's hear from the applicant.
All right. Good evening again, everyone. Nick Robinson, Bradshaw Robinson's Slaughter and Rayner, LLP, 128 Hillsborough Street, Pittsburgh. Here on behalf of the same applicant again, this time for the special use permit, the quasi-judicial portion of the proceeding that Jim Cawley and Brian have both described. So it'll be a little bit different than the prior hearing. We have 4 witnesses tonight that I'll bring up and run through those pretty quickly that are to help us put into the record the evidence that's necessary to support the findings that you all will be voting on in a little bit. I'm going to try to move that along as quickly as possible and with a PowerPoint presentation as well to help. I think the description, this is the currently approved Ammons project here, and I guess it's important to point out those different zones that you see on there. The Zone 1, which is just plain yellow, is single-family residential on the main Ammons project. Zone 2, which is green, is open space as well. And then Zone 1 Flex, the crosshatched red part, allows for a little higher density residential, which includes single family and multifamily. So that's the original approved project. Let's see. You've seen this map a few times already tonight. This is the map that shows you what property is being added in the clouded red part there. And in a moment, Chris Seamster will present the particulars of the revised site plan and the open space plans to add the fur properties to this project. But I first want to ask Tanya Matson to come up and to testify regarding the developer team and the approach for the additional acreage. Tanya? I can do the slides if you want me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Good evening. Tanya Matson, 4020 West Chase Boulevard, Suite 150, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27607. I am currently the Senior Vice President for Brookfield Properties, who is the developer, as you know, of Wendell Falls, and we plan to bring much of the same to the Ammons property here. I have been with the Brookfield team for over 10 years, so I did participate in the envisioning process of Wendell Falls as well. So start to finish, it's been a very rewarding process, and so happy it's provides shared value for the community of Wendell. I'd like to start with reading our mission statement. Brookfield strives to create exceptional places and experience where people connect, are inspired, and thrive. As you know from Wendell Falls, Brookfield creates places that are intentionally designed with the end user in mind. And our intent with that is for these communities to get better over time. What sets Brookfield apart is our long-term vision. This long-term approach allows us to analyze the community's needs over time, which then continually has us working towards enhancing the quality of life for all of our residents. When you're looking at a life cycle of, 8, 9, 10 years. Each product has to be as fresh in year 1 as it is at the end of the project. So quality and innovation is key to what we do. We like to bring together best-in-class amenities, best-in-class home designs, and community features. Our experienced team integrates themselves into the community, so we are constantly aware and understand the community needs, and this ensures our projects are successful. Our developments are walkable, have a diverse mix of housing options. We offer recreation, conveniences, and incorporate gathering spaces that promote social engagement and connections. We not only care about what a community looks like, we truly care what a community feels like. And that's the intention of our strategy towards this project. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next witness that I want to call up is Chris Seamster, who will walk you through the site plan and the open space plan. Just push that to go to the next.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Good evening. I'm Chris Eamster with McKim & Creed. Our office address is 4300 Edwards Mill Road in Raleigh, and I'm a regional manager with the Land Development Department in my company. I have a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from Virginia Tech. I'm a professional landscape architect in North Carolina, license number 982, and I have 29 years of experience. 23 years with McKim & Creed. I've worked with the town of Wendell on various projects over the years and extensively since 2014, as we've been the site designer and engineer for Wendell Falls and now the Ammons project. Yep. I've been part of the layout and design of this project and worked with the town staff to ensure compliance with the town standards.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I'd like to tender Chris Seamster as an expert in the field of site and land development, land planning, and site design.
All right, so the plan you've seen a few times tonight, still on the screen. It shows the original Ammons approval plus the 24-acre additional part of it with the Fir project, or Fir properties. The project as a whole, included the maximum of 1,833 residential units divided between single-family detached townhomes and multifamily. The Fir property adds 97 residential units without changing the overall density, which was a max of 4 units per acre, which is consistent, as noted tonight, with the Wendell Blueprint 2030 goals and vision. The basic layout of the site will be residential lots connecting to the Ammons Ponder project, and also Marshburn Manor that will work around the existing pond and the riparian buffers that you see in green there. The plan will also be to connect, have a street connection to Marshburn Road. The developable area of the new project will match Zone 1 Flex, which is the yellow and red striped you see from the Ammons project, and that allows for single-family detached, single-family attached, and multifamily. This is the open space map, Exhibit A2, which shows the passive open space and riparian buffers around the existing pond in the middle of the site and along Falls Branch along the south side and southeast corner of the property. We're extending the public greenway, as noted, into this property along the stream for about 500 feet. We're also including a 20-foot Type B buffer around the south and west sides of the site along Marshburn, as we were doing in the Ammons project. Buffers and open space shown is about a little over 5 acres, or 23% of the new property. Thank you.
So, Chris, I'm showing you what I've marked as Exhibit 1, which is a meets and bounds property description of the property to be rezoned. Is that prepared by your firm?
Prepared by our firm and our professional surveyor within our company.
Okay, so that's a description of the property to be added to the PUD?
Correct.
We can do this any way you want. If you have questions for a witness as they come up, you're free to interject, interrupt, ask them right then, or we can call them back up at the end, however you'd like to proceed.
We'll wait till the end.
Okay, all right. So the next witness is Danielle Troutman, who would talk about traffic.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I am Danielle Troutman. Office address is 418 South Dawson Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. I am a transportation project engineer at Bolton & Mink. I have received a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from NC State University, and I am currently licensed as a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina, and I've been working as a traffic engineer for over 6 years now.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I'd like to tender Danielle Troutman as an expert in the field of transportation engineering.
Yes,
Thank you.
So I'm gonna go, how do you do next slide on here?
Oh, yeah, just push down.
Okay.
To the next one. Yeah, there we go.
Alrighty. So a traffic impact analysis was originally done for the Ammons property, and was originally completed with town staff and DOT, with the assumptions that the project would include 1,833 residential units. The analysis included studying nearby intersections, and also included traffic anticipated from several other projects in the study area. We have reviewed the impact of adding these 97 residential units and the additional access point along Marshburn Road. And we are in agreement with the update letter for the Fur property that was provided by DRMP, which is where the trip generation shown on the screen has came from. And we conclude the following. The geometric improvements that were recommended in the original TIA and in coordination with NCDOT are expected to accommodate the additional traffic generated by those 97 residential units. Additionally, the original TIA analyzed the impacts of a maximum of 1,700 single-family residential units. So even with the additional 97 units, the proposed development is still expected to have a unit count below the max 1,700 units that were analyzed in the original TIA study. If the development were to exceed those 1,700 residential units, it is understood that an updated traffic study would be needed and would be provided.
Hang on just a sec. So the chart that you've got up on the screen there comes from this update letter from DRMP with regard to just adding the 97 units. Is that the letter that the item shown on the screen comes from?
Correct.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and move admission of this as well. Which is the two-page update. Well, this would be exhibit 2. I will go right on there. All right. I'd like to call up Hunter Howell, impact on property values.
Thanks.
It's down, you won't need to.
I don't think I need good evening, everyone. My name is Hunter Howell. My office address is 412 East Chatham Street, Cary, North Carolina. I'm a professional real estate appraiser, and I work with Paramount Commercial Appraisers. I'm currently licensed in North Carolina as a state-certified general appraiser. I'm a member of the Appraisal Institute working towards a MAI designation, and I've been appraising properties throughout Wake County now for approximately 10 years. I was engaged by the applicant to examine this development's impact on the site and the surrounding area. In 2022, I prepared a report in which I analyzed the effects of the proposed residential development to determine the effects of the surrounding areas. I have updated this report to address the addition of the 97 residential units on the Fur properties.
Okay. I'd like to tender Mr. Howell as an expert in the field of real estate appraisal.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I reviewed the revised plan, the character of the surrounding area, and how this type of development typically impacts surrounding properties. The proposed development will be located conveniently between downtown Wendell and downtown Zebulon with easy access to US Highway 64. This location is advantageous for larger development to be placed here. This eases traffic congestion not only to the adjacent sites, but also to the larger area as well. The surrounding land uses include a mix of vacant land, standalone single-family residential homes, and residential subdivisions scattered throughout. With the surrounding land uses being residential in nature, the Ammons proposed master plan for the residential development is compatible with the surrounding residential land uses. I also examined the current demographics, surrounding developments, and the residential housing market within what I considered the proposed development's neighborhood. From this data, I concluded that nearby proposed or under construction residential developments range from 2.52 units per acre to 5.17 units per acre. And based on this, the proposed Ammons master plan development with approximately 4 units per acre is compatible with the surrounding developments within the general neighborhood. The housing market within the Ammons Master Plan Development's general neighborhood has been tight over the past several years. Researched residential sales from 2021 through 2023. From these sales, the average sales prices have increased substantially and the days on market have decreased. Both of these statistics indicate a strong residential market in need of additional inventory. In regard how this development will impact the surrounding properties, there's generally a positive impact to the surrounding properties with the type of development proposed. As new residential developments come to areas, it enhances the surrounding area positively in terms of property values. Increasing home values increases the value of vacant land as developers look to fill the void of additional housing options. This has been seen in several instances across the Triangle market. We looked at 3 larger residential subdivisions with master plans in other formerly semi-rural areas and found that they have sparked further development of adjacent property and have increased land values. These areas were mostly vacant agricultural land with the development broke ground, and these areas have since seen rapid growth and positive impacts on adjacent land, especially as commercial uses were needed to support this residential growth. Based on my experience and my analysis of the subject's neighborhood, the proposed Ammons Master Plan and the addition of the 24 or so acres is compatible with the surrounding land uses and maintain or enhance the value of adjacent properties.
Mr. Howell, is this a copy of the report that you did to update your prior report from the Ammons project about the impacts that you just described?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to move the admission of that as Exhibit 3. I don't know if I ever moved the admission of all 3 of them, but I do that now. Okay, great, thank you. All right. Coming to the end here. Appreciate your patience with that. We obligated to get evidence into the record to support the findings that hopefully you all will make. The last part, Brian went over this to some extent. These are the approval criteria that the evidence that has been submitted into the record is to support. And I'm just going to run through them very quickly to supplement what Brian said about the various different ways in which all of these factors are met. The first 2 factors, that the proposed use does not affect adversely the general plans for the physical development of the town, and the proposed use will not be contrary to the purposes stated in the regulations. I agree with Brian that Mr. Seamster has now testified, as did Brian, that the proposed use and density are permitted in the site zoning district and are supported by the town's comprehensive plan. The third factor, I guess, Factor C, that the proposed use will not adversely affect the health and safety of residents. We have Mr. Howell just testify that the proposed use is appropriately located adjacent to residential uses, and Ms. Troutman explained that the transportation improvements are appropriately designed to handle the additional traffic caused by this particular amendment and will provide efficient access for emergency services. Factor D, proposed use will not be detrimental to the use of development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. Mr. Howell testified on this one and on the next factor that the proposed use will not be affected adversely by the existing uses, that the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding uses nearby and won't be detrimental to adjacent property values as a result. Factor F, the proposed use will be placed on a lot of sufficient size. Mr. Seamster testified that the site plan complies with the UDO requirements as modified for this PUD. Mr. Coates also mentioned that it's within the size limitations for the density on the project. Factor G, the proposed use will not constitute a nuisance or hazard because the number of persons who will attend or use the facility, vehicular movement, noise, or fume generation or type of physical activity. So we have the testimony of Mr. Seamster, Mr. Howell, and Ms. Troutman on all of those points to support that finding. H, that the standards set forth for each particular use or project for which a permit may be granted have been met. With respect to that, Mr. Seamster testified that the site plan conforms to all the applicable UDO provisions as modified within this PUD district and by the PUD document itself, which has also been verified by planning staff throughout the process. And the same answer on factors J and K as well. So with that, I'd just like to state to the board that I'm appreciative of your time and interest this evening, and we feel like that all of the evidence that's in the record supports the findings and would support a vote in favor, and so we would respectfully, after you've had your opportunity to ask any questions or and confer among yourselves, vote to approve the requested PUD amendment this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from the board? Any questions from the board? None? All right. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak that was sworn? No?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion.
Let's close the public hearing. Okay, so nothing else from the board? We'll close the public hearing. Okay. All right, go.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the special use permit SUP 2402 because it meets the standards for approval outlined in section 15.15 of the town's UDO.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the special use permit because it meets the standards of for approval as outlined in section 1515 of the Town of Wendell UDO. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, thank y'all. Move into our administrative items. Item 6A is fiscal year 2025 budget ordinance amendment number 2. Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. So here tonight to present the second budget budget ordinance amendment for fiscal year 2025 budget. This is the second ordinance amendment for this year. The most recent was made August 26th. The goal of a budget ordinance amendment is to maintain budgetary compliance with a balanced budget, which includes recognizing new revenues, recognizing excessively performing revenues, as well as any expenses that may have arisen that were unanticipated. Staff tries to perform these amendments at least quarterly, so we're tracking well on that. You as the board have adopted the budget at a department level, though we try to track and amend at a line item level when it makes sense, when it's reasonable. So the budget ordinance amendment that you received in your packet includes line item breakdowns for revenues and expenditures. Though I have provided some more department head level summaries in your packet, but here are some of the highlights that made up the amendment. We had additional legal and financial advisor expenses as part of the Public Works Yard installment financing agreement. These were covered in additional loan proceeds that you approved for to be the LGC, and the LGC approved to be issued. We've experienced additional carryover expenses for this facility, the new town hall. We should be wrapping that up soon. So this is inclusive of anything else we would need to pay out to close this project out officially. There are funds that would be required to demolish the house adjacent to this property at 451 West 3rd Street that we recently acquired. You'll see an increase in police department part-time wages. This was primarily attributed to increased work from a retired officer who's working part-time with us to perform some administrative projects while we were in the process of filling the vacant police captain's position. Additionally, you'll see it's a large sum, but transferring capital expenses to non-capital expenses, that's kind of just changing the definition based on what we purchased for drone drone acquisitions. You'll see a decent increase in the Public Works non-capital line item expense. Following the 4th of July event that we had this year, it was determined by staff that it would be best to fast track, if you will, acquiring the appropriate number of mobile radios to be able to communicate amongst staff during special events, but also during any kind of inclement weather where staff are going to be out on the roads in potentially dangerous situations. There's some additional Public Works Yard capital expenses. Again, this is also covered through the additional proceeds that were received through the loan issuance. There was a internal department transfer within the Streets Division of Public Works. We're transferring some funds from engineering services to an equipment capital outlay for a dump truck that we have on order. There was a opportunity to add, I'm speaking a little ignorantly on this, but a piece of equipment to the vehicle that provides safety monitoring. Manager Collins can speak to that probably a little better.
It's a module in the computer system that helps prevent the vehicle from flipping in certain situations, which is a needed safety for a large, expensive piece of equipment like that. It's a little addition that provides a new safety feature that wasn't available prior.
So a relatively small expense for arguably a larger benefit. We did have a HVAC unit fail at the senior center, so we did have to replace that. It is my understanding that now all the units over there are only a few years old, so we shouldn't, knock on wood, have to worry about that for a little while. And finally, with the town kind of taking over more independently the senior center activities, we did budget funds for senior center programming, contracted class instructors. As I mentioned, provided kind of some higher level summary. So an increase of about $427,000 expenses. Of that, it was balanced with $363,000 in revenues and $64,000 in fund balance appropriations. Of the $363,000, $90,000 or so is recognizing new revenues. These are made up of a couple grants that the police department received. The major one being for body-worn cameras, which we already budgeted for, but this provides external funding to accomplish that. The additional revenues is just recognizing revenues that are already budgeted for or anticipated, but are currently outperforming what budget staff anticipated. And then you'll see the various departments that were incorporated into this amendment, the changes within how much that department changed as part of this amendment. So with that, happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, looking for a motion to approve the ordinance.
Anything from the board? Any questions or comments?
Madam Mayor, I move we approve Budget Ordinance Amendment Number 2.
All right, we have a motion to approve Budget Ordinance Amendment Number 2. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, passes. Item 6B is the award contract for compensation and classification study and to authorize the town manager to negotiate and sign the contract. Ms. Smith.
Good evening once again. As you know, a personnel policy provides a town manager periodically reviews a position classification plan, and when needed, recommends major changes to the board. We have retained consultant every 5 years to complete a comprehensive evaluation of all positions. So the last time we did our comprehensive compensation and classification study was in 2019. We released the RFP to provide such services on September 13th. Deadline of October 11th. We received 7 responses. We evaluated the RFPs by the following criteria: experience with communities, organizations of similar size, understanding the scope of work, strategy for providing required services, demonstrated ability of key personnel, timeliness to complete work, and cost competitiveness. We have ranked the vendors in the following order, with Evergreen Solutions as the top scoring firm. Evergreen Solutions has a lot of experience in the area with North Carolina organizations similar to ours. They also have identified that they would be able to complete their work within the time frame that we have requested by the end of February, which would allow us to incorporate the results of their findings into the fiscal year 25 budget. And it is within the budget that we have estimated for this project at $16,500. So we are requesting the board authorize the town manager to negotiate and sign an agreement for a compensation and classification study with our recommended vendor, Evergreen Solutions. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Madam Mayor, I move we authorize the town manager to negotiate and sign the contract and award the contract for a compensation and classification study.
So we have a motion to authorize the town manager to negotiate and sign a contract, sign a compensation and classification study contract with the recommended vendor. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Item 6C is the bid award for the Carver Community Center at Pleasant Grove.
Just to clarify for the record, I think I heard FY '25 implementation is '26. In case there's an employee expecting additional compensation this year, it's next fiscal year, not current. And of course, it'd be subject to whatever the finding and
That might not even
resources
change that
available to the board.
employee's-
And, yeah, so just
Just don't know.
putting out a realistic expectation for anybody watching or listening. A list of exciting things to work through tonight, and last but definitely not least is we've completed the bid process for a contractor to do the construction and rehabilitation for the Carver Community Center at Pleasant Grove. That working title is a title that the work group, including the Pleasant Grove Baptist Church and CDC, have come up with for that project, if you're curious where that name came from. We did have to follow a public bid process necessary for the various funding sources that we had. Our architect, Andre Johnson Architects, led us through that process. We started with a pre-qualification process. We had 5 firms originally for that. 4 were deemed by this board eligible, pre-qualified to move forward in that process. Of those 4, we did receive 3 competent bidders by the bid deadline, Wednesday, November 6th at 2 p.m. And that sign-in sheet for those contractors is provided as part of the packet. Of those, the lowest competent and complete bid was Southway. Make sure I say that right. Southway Builders, Inc. And their low original bid plus contingency was 9.271337. With the add alternates, the total anticipated contract cost of the project is $9,568,337. As such, staff and professional architect recommend that the board award the bid to Southway Builders Incorporated and authorize the town manager to negotiate a contract and sign.
Any questions, comments from the board?
just for anybody from Pleasant Grove listening, another thing that we're working on is the use agreement of the property and structure. We would complete that and bring that back to the board after the Pleasant Grove Baptist Church and the CDC have signed off on that. Bring that back to y'all for consideration as well before any work is done on the property, so that the church, the property owner understands what can be done and how they can use the facility, and you as the keeper of the public purse and public access understand that there is a public benefit to the project. So all that gets cleared up before the construction starts.
That won't take a long time, will it?
I hope not.
Like
The bid is good for a certain period of time. We're drafting the agreement now. We've had a lot of conversation over the last couple of years about what those uses are and put them in a lot of different grant applications and other.
So we shouldn't be starting from scratch.
Yeah, no.
All right, any questions or comments from the board?
Exciting night, another step forward. So,
Yeah.
good to hear.
Madam Mayor, I move we award the bid for rehabilitation and construction of the Carver Community Center at Pleasant Grove to Southway Builders, Inc., and authorize the town manager to sign the contract.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to award the bid for the rehabilitation and construction of the Carver Community Center at Pleasant Grove to Southway Builders, Inc., and authorize the town manager to sign the contract. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, thank you. Moving to our other business, we have one, Wendell Volunteer Fire Department Board of Directors, Commissioner Joyner.
Madam Mayor, that meeting was actually rescheduled to this evening, so I was unable to attend. I'll update you at the next meeting.
Start with our commissioners' reports and start with you.
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Lutz? Commissioner Eatman?
Nothing tonight.
Commissioner Honeycutt?
I attended an urban planning training session. It was awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Deloach?
Nothing, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Well, I don't even have mine out.
Shocker.
What's wrong with y'all? Two things real quick. First, I want to congratulate Wendell Magnet Middle School football team. They just finished their season 7-1, and they are the Eastern Conference champions. So very proud of you, and thank you for making Wendell so proud. Can't wait till next year. Also, I wanted to real quickly congratulate Wendell resident Ray Hennett. Ray recently was awarded the Wendell Historical Society Lifetime Achievement Award. If any of you know him, he's very deserving of that. He has served as our longtime historian and treasurer of the Historical Society, and the person that you go to if you have any kind of a question. He knows all the details and all the information. So he has been the Society's record keeper, treasurer, and historian for many, many years. And congratulations, Ray. Thank you for keeping up with our history. You're very deserving of that recognition. One thing it came up several times tonight that I would like to get on our agenda sometime in the next little bit is maybe an update on some paving and projects and sidewalk things that we're having, kind of an overall thing, because there are a lot of questions that I'm getting a lot of questions, and everybody is. And I think the citizens would benefit from having kind of an overview of what's happening, how quick it's going to happen, so that it softens the edges of having to wait in line to get to places if you kind of know. So let's try to get that on the agenda in the next bit. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned.